Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this pleasant Monday afternoon. Actually, no, it's not pleasant because you want to know what happened over the weekend? My New York Giants ended up losing to the Philadelphia Eagles. So, if any of you guys are interested in hearing people's thoughts about that game, if you're interested in listening to Giants fans talk about that game, we have two podcasts. One of them is the football podcast, and the other one is the sports podcast. We have two Giants fans who are hosts of both of those podcasts. If you guys are interested in their thoughts of not just that game, but every other game that went down over the weekend for football, then we have that in store for you as well. And there's also a college football podcast that specializes in all of the college matchups, and there's a lot of them that happen over the weekend. So if any of you guys are interested in football, I highly recommend tuning into those podcasts that are on the channel as well. Now, but you guys did not come here for football. You guys came here for basketball. And as much as I'd love to talk about football, I also would want to talk about basketball because the Liberty have won the WNBA Finals. And we are going to talk about that in the first segment. And then in the second and the third segment, probably going to be two segments, we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and talk about NBA records that could be broken in this coming season and how likely I think those when I think those records are going to be broken, and also my thoughts on the record actually being broken and the player who's going to end up breaking that record. So I'm going to talk about that in the second and the third segment. And then in the fourth segment, opening night is tomorrow. So tomorrow is going to be the start of the NBA season, and I'm just going to give my predictions on some of the winners who I think is going to win in that game. And then we also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $sign below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's all right. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment as well. The link should be popping up really soon. It's gsmcpodcast.net. You can send your comments and or donations to that link and show your support. Really helps the channel, really makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's talk about the WNBA Finals. So as you can see by the ticker, and if you guys were paying attention to what I said, the Liberty, they ended up winning the WNBA championship. Now, this was an incredibly close final game, and honestly, all of the games in the WNBA were really, in the finals, were incredibly close. And this game was decided in overtime, where the Liberty ended up prevailing 67-62. The finals MVP for the WNBA was Jonquel Jones, the center for the Liberty. She ended the game with 17 points and 6 rebounds. A very, very dominant performance for an elimination game in the WNBA. And what are my thoughts on this game? So I think that this game was one of the biggest chokes in the entire history of the Lynx. And the reason why I say this, I understand that the Liberty, they had home field advantage, so you weren't really expected to win as an away team, if you're the Lynx. So it's you could end up winning, but, it's not really that expected. Usually the team with home field advantage ends up prevailing towards the end in elimination games. But again, obviously, that's not the case. And like I said before, in every single elimination game, when you go to an elimination game, the teams are evenly matched. And chances are, the team that has the best player on the court is going to win the game. Now, for the Liberty, the two players who are usually the best on the court, Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, were abysmal last night. They were absolutely atrocious. In fact, combined, they made a total of 5 shots. Combined. And in terms of shot attempts, they made 5, but then they end up taking, let's do some quick math right here. They end up taking 34 shots. So they went 5 for 34 in the elimination game. Brenna Stewart ended up going 4 for 15 by herself with 13 points. And Sabrina Ionescu went 1 for 19. I'm going to repeat that. 1 for 19 in an elimination game. That is absolutely atrocious. In fact, that is almost criminal. And the Liberty still end up winning in this game. Like, when your two best players are shooting like this, now is your time to pounce. That is your chance to take the series. That is your chance to steal the game and win it in the end. But the Lynx didn't end up doing that, unfortunately. And while Nafisa Collier ended up performing as dominantly as she's ever done in the postseason, 22 points and 7 rebounds, along with Kayla McBride, who ended the game with 21 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, she didn't really get that much aid from her teammates, which was a big problem. Courtney Williams ended up going 2 for 14 in this elimination game, and Bridget Carlton ended up going 1 for 6 in this elimination game. So the real problem was the teammates. And even then, this game was still winnable in overtime. All you had to do was make a couple of important shots towards the very end, and you could have prevailed. The three-point shooting from the Lynx was also incredibly poor. They ended up shooting 15%, 3 for 19, but the Liberty ended up shooting worse, going 2 for 23 on 8%. 2 made three-pointers in an elimination game. That is absolutely abysmal. This was the best chance for the Lynx to come out and break this game open and win this game in the end, but they failed to do so. Now, you could make the argument that this wasn't really that big of a choke on the Lynx, as this was just better all-around team basketball played from the Liberty, as they had multiple players in double figures as opposed to the Lynx, who just had 2. That I understand. But still, this was an incredibly ugly WNBA Finals. This was this was incredibly ugly. Like, it was really bad to watch, especially like it really seemed like every single time one of the teams threw up a three-pointer, it was just going to be brick after brick after brick. It was really bad. And a lot of people, of course, didn't end up watching this game. And I'll tell you why. This game happened yesterday, when football was going on. And guess who was playing football at 8:20? The New York Jets. There aren't many New York fans that are going to tune into the Liberty game as opposed to tuning into the Jets game, regardless of how bad they are. Not to mention, the MLB postseason is also going on at around this time. There was a game yesterday between the Mets and the Dodgers, and these sort of games were going on at the same time as the WNBA. I'm sorry, but it's like New York is not going to look at the WNBA as opposed to looking at baseball or as opposed to looking at football. And I say New York because the Mets and the Jets ended up playing in this game. And the Liberty ended up playing in that night as well. So it's like there was a lot of things to tune into, but more often than not, people are going to tune in to those other two sports over the WNBA, regardless of it having its most popular season in recent memory. In fact, while we are on the topic of that, the WNBA is apparently going to lose money this season. They're going to lose around $43 million this season. And the NBA, the NBA executives that put money into the WNBA are growing impatient. And can you really blame them? This is the most popular season that the WNBA has had in its entire history, and it's still losing money. Why is this? Well, aside from the fact that Caitlin Clark wasn't in the playoffs, it all stems back to what I've been saying from the beginning. These WNBA playoffs cannot be going on when other sports teams are playing in their leagues. They cannot be happening. They have to go on at times when teams aren't playing until they can build that popularity, because asking the WNBA to compete with the NFL is a complete death sentence. The NBA couldn't compete with the NFL. What makes these executives think that the WNBA is going to be able to compete with the NFL? It does not make any sense. These games should have been held at completely different times, either earlier on in the day or some completely different day. If you really need it to be a primetime game, you can have it on completely different days. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are wide open most of the time. And if you're going to do it at a primetime, like primetime is usually at around, like, I want to say maybe 6:30 to around 9 o'clock. It's usually when primetime is for a lot of people who use television. You have to have those games set up early so that way it doesn't interfere with any of the later games. It just cannot happen. And this has been the problem from the jump. This was their most popular season, and the most important part of their season, the postseason, was swept completely under the rug. In fact, in an earlier meeting, like in a meeting that I literally just had a few minutes ago, one of the people, I'm not going to disclose his name, one of the people ended up saying that he didn't find out that the WNBA was going to have a 7-game final series until LeBron talked about it. That kind of advertisement is incredibly weak, and in a league that's trying to increase its popularity, that cannot happen. Like, the timing is of the essence when it comes to these sort of things. You have to do it at a time when either people aren't expecting it or when people don't have anything better to do at this point in their season and at this point in the WNBA's conflection. Because, again, they're just starting to gain traction. And in order to properly gain that traction, you have to bring out news and you have to bring out these kinds of information at a time when nothing else is going on. Because all of these other sports leagues, the MLB, the NFL, the NBA, they already have an established platform. The WNBA is slowly starting to build up to that, but they aren't there yet. And I don't think that they realized that when they scheduled these playoff games. Because again, this playoff series came down to the wire in almost every single game. And they still couldn't gain any viewership because there were other sports games going on and other sports fans that were going to tune into those sports games due to the already established fan base that the sports league has. It's something that just cannot happen with this WNBA, and I'm extremely disappointed at the scheduling of these games. Extremely disappointed. It was a huge missed opportunity, and I guarantee you that there's going to be so many planners that are going to end up losing their job because of this. I'm sorry to say this, but this was a terrible job with the postseason. An absolutely horrible job. But that's all that I really have to say about this first segment. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. So, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about NBA players who are most likely going to break a record in this season. Now, you guys will learn exactly like what I mean by that and exactly what I'll be talking about in this second segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about some NBA players who are on the verge of breaking incredible records this coming season. And I totally expect them to break these records in this season. And I'll go over exactly which records I'm talking about when I list off the players. So that's sort of how this segment is going to go. This was inspired by an Instagram account that is titled Buckets. So if you guys are interested in that, I recommend looking at some of their posts on Instagram. So before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share, we are all ears. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's totally fine. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. gsmcpodcast.net should be popping up real soon. Yeah, you could see it right there. And you can send in your comments and donations that way if you don't want to use Super Chat. Again, this really helps the show. This makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about these records. So before I start, these records are going to be different for every player, obviously, because there are going to be players that are closer to breaking some records than other players are closer to breaking those records. And sometimes it's not even like records being broken, it's more so milestones that they're going to achieve. So some people might call them records, some people might call them milestones. It's more or less the same thing, and it falls under that same category. So after I list off the first player and the milestone that they're going to surpass, then you'll sort of understand how this segment is going to work. So for starters, we're going to start with Chris Paul, CP3. And I totally understand that this is an outdated jersey, but still, it's Chris Paul. And we all know who Chris Paul is. He's a point god, as people like to call him. One of the best point guards that the NBA has ever seen. And he needs 197 assists to pass Jason Kidd for second in all-time assists. Now, this is obviously an incredible milestone to have, and one that is obviously, it's happening because of Chris Paul's longevity. Similar to LeBron James, Chris Paul's longevity is incredible. He's been solid for so many years, and he's really been that reliable option for a team. Every single time a team ends up acquiring Chris Paul, the team ends up playing vastly better with him at the point guard position. He is the definition of making your teammates better. The clear-cut definition of a point guard that makes your team better, which is why I don't understand why people say that Halliburton is the first true point guard of this generation when Chris Paul is still playing in this league. I think that's rather disrespectful because Chris Paul has been able to do more or less like what Halliburton has done for longer periods of time. And I completely understand that Chris Paul is nowhere near in his prime, but his effects on a team and the impact that he has on a team, the minute he steps foot into the locker room, is apparent. Every single time he joins a team, they've had a winning record, and they've had a better record than they've had previously. This is just known for Chris Paul. This is just the aura that he brings. If you wanna use more modern terms, this is just what he does. He's been doing it since day one, since he was drafted in by the Hornets, New Orleans Hornets, by the way, and then when he got traded over to the Clippers, and then when he got traded again all the way over to Houston, and then traded again to OKC. Every single time he's made his team better. And part of that, and a big reason to that, is because of how he can set up his teammates with the passing. I should say, and I should point out, that he makes his team better in the regular season, because in the postseason, and this is going to haunt his career throughout the entirety of his life, he is a playoff choker. Now, the numbers don't show it. I will say that the numbers don't show it, but it's just, he's one of those players where it's like, you look at him and you do the eye test, and you could see, right, this guy just doesn't step it up in the postseason. It's really just, it's a thing that he has. I don't know how to explain it, but it's very, very common for him to lose in a series when a lot of people feel like he inevitably should have won in the end. He did it twice when he was on the Clippers, blowing a 3-1 lead. He did it when he was, unfortunately, it's just bad luck. It's a lot of bad luck that comes with it as well. In Houston, he ended up getting injured in the most important point for his team before Game 6 and Game 7, which ultimately decided the series for the Golden State Warriors. Not to mention, afterwards, in the year prior, in the year after, when the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors ended up matching up again in the postseason, he was nowhere to be found in the postseason. And then he gets traded over to OKC, where he does lead the team to 7 games, and unfortunately ends up losing to James Harden. And then when he went to Phoenix, where he actually looked like he had the best chance of winning a ring, going up 2-0 in the series, he ends up blowing all of those games afterwards in the final series against Milwaukee, losing in 6. It's just a thing. It's a common trend that Chris Paul has, and it's unfortunate that that's how a lot of people are going to remember him. But regardless, being second in all-time assists, I definitely feel like it's going to boost him in the all-time point guard rankings, in my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think it's not really going to be any sort of huge addition? Do you guys think that if he really wants to move up in the top point guards, that he has to win a championship? In fact, my opinion is, who do you guys think is better? Do you think Chris Paul is better, or do you think Russell Westbrook is better? For their entire career, not off of this season, not off of last season, their entire career, which player do you think is better? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about that. Now, next player, before we run out of time in this segment, I did take up a lot of time with this. I'm going to probably take up a lot of time with a lot of these players. James Harden. Now, James Harden is 34 three-pointers away from passing Ray Allen and being second in all-time three-pointers made. Now, this sort of milestone is similar to LeBron's milestone when he passed Kareem, in the sense that we didn't expect anybody to break this record. If there was anybody that was going to break Ray Allen's record, everyone immediately assumed it would be Steph Curry, and you would be right to think so. However, another player reaching that mark and actually exceeding that mark, and one of those players being James Harden, is incredibly shocking. James Harden is being, with the total three-pointers that he's made, there's argument brewing that he is one of the top 5 or top 10 best shooters in the history of the NBA. And let me know in the comments what you guys think of that, because from where I'm standing, I would never, ever consider James Harden a better three-point shooter than Ray Allen. From where I'm standing, even though James Harden is easily going to break this record and probably exceed it assuming however long his career ends up lasting, this was something that was completely unexpected to me. And I still wouldn't put James Harden as a better shooter than Ray Allen. I'm sure a lot of people share that same opinion, but it's so amazing, how this game has evolved from when Ray Allen played and when Kobe played and the early 2000s to what it is now. It's absolutely ridiculous. Players are getting better. Players are taking much more efficient shots. Players are understanding the values in the shots that they take. The game overall is just developing, and it's developing right in front of our eyes. It's developing right in front of us right now. And this is just something that, again, I never would have thought would have happened. A lot of people didn't really think that LeBron was going, or anybody was going to come close to Kareem's scoring record, yet here we are. Similar to that, a lot of people didn't think that no one was going to come close to Ray Allen and his scoring record. But given how the league has evolved, mainly thanks to Steph Curry, a lot more players are going to take more threes, and as a result, they're going to start making a lot more threes. So there might be a time in the history of basketball where Ray Allen is going to be left completely in the dust after most of these players and after their careers are over. Like, this is sort of the era, and this is how this league is moving, and this is how it's advancing in today's game. And it's very, very impressive to watch. So, again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think James Harden is a top 10 three-point shooter ever? Do you guys think he's like top 5 even? Or do you think that this milestone is just, it's another thing that's reproduced based off of longevity? Because James Harden has had a very long career, and he's made a lot of three-pointers in his career. So that's all that I really have for this second segment. We're going to continue on with this list right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested in hearing some more opinions and some more records that are going to be broken in this season. So I'll be right back after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I'm going to be continuing on with the list of players who are very, very close to achieving milestones and breaking records in this NBA season that is going to be coming up. I already mentioned Chris Paul being possibly going to be ranked second all-time in assists by the end of the season. And I also mentioned James Harden, who is definitely going to break Ray Allen's three-point record and be second ranked in most three-pointers made, only behind Steph. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with that list, and we're going to start it with Nikola Jokic. Now, Nikola Jokic, as we know, he is a phenomenal NBA player, one of the best, if not the best, basketball player in the NBA right now. He's won MVP last season. He did not win it the previous season before that in 2022, but he did end up winning the Finals MVP, and, 2023, being the year that he ended up winning the Finals MVP. And then he ended up winning MVP in 2021 and 2022 as well. So he's a very, very great, phenomenal player. One of the best centers that we've seen ever. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Ever. One of the best centers that we've ever seen. Period. Done. His offense is by far the most versatile from any center we've ever seen. Most of the time, we see centers, they really like, I'm not saying that Jokic doesn't like to abuse the paint, but a lot of centers, they use their strength to their advantage, and they abuse the paint. Jokic has other means of being viable on offense, more so than just being a straight-up dunker, like a majority of the centers that are all-time greats. Unlike most centers, he is one of the best passers that the league has ever seen. You can make the argument that, in fact, it's not even an argument at this point, he is the best passing center in the history of basketball, by far, without a doubt. And with this, obviously, comes a lot of triple-doubles. And now, given that in this season, all he needs is 9 triple-doubles. He is 9 triple-doubles away from being third on the all-time triple-double list. And the only players that have more triple-doubles than him would be, at that point, would be Oscar Robertson and Russell Westbrook. Those would be the only players that end up getting more triple-doubles than Nikola Jokic if this season comes to an end. And it's only 9 games. I mean, it's an 82-game season. He's definitely going to play way more than 50 games, unlike Joel Embiid. And in 9 of them, he's definitely going to end up breaking this triple-double record. And all that would stand in front of him would be Oscar Robertson and Russell Westbrook. Now, I believe that Russell Westbrook, and in my personal opinion, Russell Westbrook is way out of his prime. And given how Nikola Jokic is still relatively young, again, he's not the youngest player in the NBA, but he's still relatively young for how good he is in the NBA. Let me just go ahead and just make sure that I'm not being crazy. Yeah, he's just about to be 30 years old. So that means he's definitely going to still have more years left in him in the tank. And at this rate, he's probably going to be, in my opinion, the league leader in triple-doubles by the time his career comes to an end. And really, it's phenomenal what he's been able to do. And again, 9 triple-doubles away from breaking that milestone. So I definitely have him achieving that. Now, next player on this list is Kevin Durant. Now, Kevin Durant is 656 points away from passing Moses Malone for 9th all-time in points ever in the NBA. And again, being known as one of the league's best scorers in the history of basketball, being in the top 10 in scoring is going to obviously, enforce that argument. Now, let me just go ahead and do some quick math real quick. So, Kevin Durant, he's averaged, I want to say maybe he'll average 27 points per game in this season. At the least, maybe. We'll just say 27 times, and we'll give him leeway for injury. We'll say that he's going to play 60 games. We'll do that. So 27 times 60 is going to be 1,620. So he's easily going to break this. He's easily going to get 656 points to pass Moses Malone all time. I did that so that way you guys, obviously 656 points, it sounds like a lot. But when someone is as good as Kevin Durant, it's really not. And in fact, we'll give him even more leeway and say that he'll play only 40 games in this season. Assuming he scores 27 in all of these games, that'll still be 1,080 points. Now, we'll give him even more leeway in the production. Let's say maybe he's on the decline. We'll say he's getting injured and he's on the decline and he's going to average 25 points per game. We'll just say 25 points per game and only play 40 games. That's still 1,000 points. So he's going to break this record. I know it sounds like a lot of points that needs to be scored, but really, when it's someone like Kevin Durant, it's not all that much. And this is definitely a milestone that I see him breaking in this season. What I don't see him doing this season is winning another NBA championship, which has been the one thing that he's been trying to do ever since he left Golden State. He's already formed 2 super teams, one in Brooklyn and one in Phoenix. Brooklyn failed due to injuries and Kyrie being a quack. And this one failed. This one is going to fail because their roster is too heavy on those 3 players, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. And they aren't really focused on the team as a whole, in my personal opinion. I don't think you can win an NBA championship just running strictly isolation. And on top of that, they've also been known to choke. Like the Phoenix Suns, they've been a team that's just been choking in a lot of these important games and in a lot of these series, and also just losing in series when we expect something more from them. And because of that, I don't think that Kevin Durant is going to achieve that milestone. He will get the points, but the championship, no, I don't think so. Next, LeBron James. LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James. You either love him, you either hate him. I don't know what you guys feel about him, and I know exactly what you guys are thinking. But how many records can LeBron break in this season? I mean, he's already going to be the oldest to score the highest amount of points, the oldest to do this, the oldest to do that, da-da-da, on and on and on. It's like record after record after record. It's almost like he is the GOAT. But aside from that, this season, LeBron James would need 1,364 points to get 50,000 career points in both playoffs and the regular season, being the only player that has ever achieved 50,000 points in this season, or in their entire career in the NBA, excuse me. So let's do some more math. So LeBron is at average 25 point per game scorer, at average, and let's say he plays. We'll just go on a wild card here and say he'll play 81 games in the season, and that would be 2,025 points, assuming he plays in 81 games, which is. It's definitely plausible that he breaks this breaks this milestone. Now, let's be a little bit more realistic here, because we do know that LeBron James isn't really going to play in every single game. It's rare, especially recently, that he's doing that. So we'll take last season. Last season, he ended up playing 71 games. So we'll do the math again. 25 by 71. 1,775 points. So he'll have to play 71 games at the minimum and score 25 in at least all of them, really. Or in at least, I'll give him maybe 15 games where he doesn't have to score 25, but he'll have to be in the 20 margin. So this, while it is a little bit more difficult and not as plausible as James Harden's milestone or Kevin Durant's milestone, this is still a legitimately plausible milestone that LeBron James can achieve. And I have no doubt that in the postseason, if they even make the postseason, we'll have to see, that this is going to be a thing that would happen in the postseason. If worse comes to worse, he gets injured, then he will not end up breaking this milestone. But hopefully, that's not going to be the case with LeBron. Now, next player on this list, Russell Westbrook. Now, this one is by far the most certain record that is going to be broken. The only thing that's really, I guess a lot of people would be, reluctant into thinking this wouldn't be broken is because of Russell Westbrook's status on the Denver Nuggets. He is going to be a bench player on the Denver Nuggets, meaning his minutes aren't going to be nearly as much as they were previously. With that being said, however, Russell Westbrook is one triple-double away from becoming the first player in NBA history to get 200 triple-doubles in their entire career. One game. He just needs one game to do this. One triple-double, and he's already got that milestone, and he's already become the first player in the history of basketball to acquire 200 triple-doubles. Just one. Again, the biggest problem with that is his status on the bench and, of course, his inefficiencies. Because he is going to be a bench player, the chances are he's not going to be able to play 30 minutes in every single game. And because you aren't going to be playing all that much, it's really difficult, especially as a point guard, to accumulate 10 assists and accumulate 10 rebounds. Now, I will say that the rebounding part might be a little bit easier now than it was in previous years, since now defenses, they tend to, or when a team shoots the basketball, they tend to run back, and the team on defense has an easy cherry-pick defensive rebound. So those kind of rebounds could inflate him and help him reach this milestone. And of course, there's the problem with the points production. Not entirely sure exactly what his role is going to be. If he's going to try to be a scorer, I really doubt that. I think he's going to be more of a facilitator for the Denver Nuggets. But again, this is still a milestone that could easily be broken if Russell Westbrook just has one fantastic game. All it takes is that one game. And he could do it. I really think he could this season. Next, and last but finally not least, Stephen Curry. Now, Steph needs 253 three-pointers to become the first player to ever hit 4,000 three-pointers in their entire career. Now, let's go ahead and check the stats just to be sure. Steph Curry's three-point makes last season, because again, like I try to remember all of these stats, but it's like Jesus, it's like a lot of them. So, for reference, last season Steph Curry made 357 three-pointers. So, easily going to be broken this year. Easily going to be the first player to get 4,000 three-pointers, and I am looking forward to it because, like, you know, while I am a LeBron fan and I don't really like Curry fans, and I'm not really a big fan of Curry or as much of a fan as most people are watching these games. I still respect Steph Curry and his talents, and seeing somebody change the game the way that he has is astonishing. It's like, this is I'm so grateful that I get to be a witness to Steph Curry and his greatness. I'm so grateful that I watched the Olympics and I watched Steph Curry just go all out in that final game with LeBron. And the only thing that I'm really not a big fan of Curry for is the fact that he ended up taking LeBron's 2 championship rings with teaming up with Kevin Durant. That's really the only big issue that I got. But aside from that, those are all the milestones that are really close to being broken in this coming season. That's all that I have for you in this segment. So let's go ahead and go into the 4th segment, where I talk about opening night and the games that are going to happen tomorrow, since the NBA season is going to start. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
I completely forgot to change the name. Well, that's a little bit embarrassing. Anyways, and we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this segment, we are going to be talking about the opening night that is going to be happening tomorrow. Obviously, like, the season for the NBA, you know, we can only review preseason games for so long. So the NBA season is going to tip off on Tuesday, so tomorrow, almost directly after the WNBA playoffs concluded. And let me just go ahead and look at the schedule real quick. The teams that are going to end up playing tomorrow. Now, notice how opening night isn't on Monday. You know, you guys notice that? And I wonder why. Maybe because Monday at around 7 o'clock, people are going to be tuning in to football. The NBA already knows how to make their schedule. So why doesn't the WNBA? Nobody knows. But that's besides the point. So the NBA season is going to tip off at 7:30. It's going to start with the Knicks going up against the Boston Celtics in TD Garden. And this is obviously, you know, one of the more anticipated Eastern Conference matchups ever as of right now. And both of those teams I expect to make the Eastern Conference Finals and face off against each other in a best-of-7 series. This is just what I expect coming in from the Knicks, and, you know, I understand that they are the Knicks, so there is always room for disappointment because they are the Knicks, and that's just what happens. They're one of the teams that also has that big bugaboo in these big games, especially in the postseason. We saw it last year, even though I think mainly it was because of a lot of players being injured in the postseason. But aside from that, this is going to be an exciting opening night for the Knicks and the Celtics. Now, the Knicks are definitely going to be playing in a hostile environment. However, I don't really think if they lose in this game, it's going to be a huge detriment to the rest of their season. Because it's opening night, I think that, this is obviously, it's going to be a time where teams need to develop and teams need to work their way in figuring out their identity. Now, the Knicks, they should already know their identity. Like, they really should. But, obviously, in an opening night and in all these games, there's always room for improvement. And that's why we have the regular season, to be able to see what we can improve on and to be able to fix all of the mistakes and all of the problems that a team might have. So if the Knicks end up losing this game, I don't see that as detrimental, and I don't think anybody else should see that as detrimental. The Knicks are going to definitely play the Boston Celtics again throughout the regular season. And let's just go ahead and look at the odds. Now, the Celtics are going to be the favorite in this matchup. Of course, they're going to be the favorite. They ended up winning the championship. And, excuse me. Now, they have, according to last season, the Celtics have been able to average better points per game, better rebounds per game, better assists per game, and fewer turnovers per game. Meanwhile, the Knicks have been a very solid defensive team, and they ended up beating the Celtics in points allowed. But it's marginal. It's very, very close. Now, I think the Celtics are easily going to end up winning this game, mainly because they're going to have home court advantage. Now, TD Garden, again, it's a very, very difficult environment to play in. And would not be surprised if, for opening night, the teams and the fans are going to end up screaming their heart out, especially since they ended up winning the championship last season. And it could be really tough for the Knicks to end up prevailing. But anything can happen in a basketball game. So we'll see how it goes. The next game that's scheduled to go on is the Timberwolves going up against the Los Angeles Lakers. That game is scheduled to start at 10 o'clock. And obviously the Lakers aren't really, I wouldn't want to say they're in a bad spot, but they definitely aren't in the best spot that they could have been, considering how they did nothing in the offseason, nothing to acquire talent, that is. And Timberwolves, you could argue that they ended up getting worse over the offseason as opposed to getting better, trading away Karl Anthony Towns to the Knicks. And really, it's like, this is going to sort of, this game, again, it's not really, I don't really think the opening night is going to be that much of an important game. I think the middle of the season is more important than anything else. And really, like, this matchup is just going to, I want to see, like, where Bronny is at an NBA level. That's really going to be the more important thing that I'm going to be focused on in this game. Can Bronny James compete with the big boys? Because he's been playing in preseason games, and yes, I understand preseason games, they still count as NBA games, but they aren't really against the starters, and they aren't really against players that are going to be in the rotation because they're that talented. So we have to see if Bronny can play with the big boys, and we also have to see if this Lakers team looks any better under JJ Redick. And that's going to be what I'm really going to be looking for in these kinds of games. Now, I'm going to end off this segment a little bit earlier than I would normally do, just because I want to get into the fifth segment, which is going to be the very final preseason recap for the for the NBA and all of its games, and because I'm also a little bit short on time. So I'm going to go into a break, and we're going to go ahead and recap all of the NBA games that went down on Friday. So be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this, hold on just 1 second, I have to email my teacher, I apologize for that. In this fifth segment, we're going to be doing our preseason recap, and we're going to just go ahead and start, because this is the final preseason recap of that I'm doing, because we're finally going to go into the NBA season, and then instead of preseason recaps, we're going to get NBA recaps. So that's going to be what's that's what's expected going into the future. And so let's go ahead. Now, the Knicks ended up losing to the Wizards, which was rather shocking. But again, this is preseason, accidents can happen. So the Wizards, they ended up winning 118 to 117 against the Knicks. The best player and the best scorer for the Washington Wizards was, in fact, Jordan Poole. Ended the game with 16 points, 5 assists, 1 rebound, and was 6 for 10 from the field. And Jared Butler was the second best player for the Wizards, who ended up getting 14 points, and was 6 for 11 from the field. Now, for the Knicks, the best player was, of course, Jalen Brunson. He ended up playing 28 minutes in this game and ended up going 10 for 15 from the field, which is very, 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 very efficient. And Karl Anthony Towns, 22 points, 0 for 5 from 3, which is a bit concerning, but again, it's preseason, so no big deal. 7 for 16 from the field, and Cameron Payne ended up going 5 for 12 from the field with 12 points. OG Anunoby ended up going 4 for 7 from the field with 14 points. And I was really impressed with OG Anunoby's defense. Again, this was against the Wizards, so it's really not all that impressive. But again, having a defender as competent as OG Anunoby is incredibly valuable for the Knicks, and we'll definitely want them to improve on their and capitalize on that defense, because that's ultimately going to be the game changer when going up against the Boston Celtics. Mikal Bridges ended up going 2 for 12 from the field and 0 for 10 from 3. And this is really bad. And a big reason to why he's shooting in the shooting slump is because he changed his jump shot. Now, one of the reasons why he ended up changing his jump shot was because he apparently grew an inch and his wingspan also increased. So because of this, he has to use a different shooting form as opposed to the shooting form that he's accustomed to, which is incredibly odd in my opinion, because the way I see it, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But clearly, the way that he was shooting the ball was affecting him, and so he needed to change his shooting form going into this season, which could spell some bad news for the Knicks, because if he doesn't develop a decent shot and a consistent shot, then this is going to be a really bad look for the Knicks in making that trade and giving up all of their picks. This is something that they have to completely revamp, and they have to adjust. Cam has to figure out how to shoot the ball. That's really, I'm sorry for exploding over there, but it's this cannot be a thing that happens. And it's I watched him when he was playing on the Nets. I watched him every single game. He had one of the crispest shots ever, and seeing him struggle the way that he's struggling now with shooting the ball, it's very, very saddening to me. But that's it for the recap of this game. The Nets, speaking of the Nets, they ended up playing the Raptors. They ended up losing 116 to 112. Cam Johnson ended up scoring 32 points in 32 minutes in this preseason game, going 7 for 14 from 3. Cam Thomas ended up going 3 for 10 with 13 points, so not really that efficient. Dennis Schroeder ended up going 3 for 11 with 12 points. And let's see, Jalen Wilson ended up going 3 for 11 as well, with 4 for 13, for 13 points. And really just an inefficient game coming in from Brooklyn, and not a game that they'll definitely want to forget. Now, the Raptors, Scotty Barnes, of course, their best player, finished with 21 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block. I mean, he just fills up the stat sheet in absolutely everything. He went 7 for 12 as well. Again, pick him up for your fantasy team. If you guys are doing a draft, pick him up for your fantasy team. He is so valuable for the team. I guarantee you. And let's see. Ochai Agbaji ended up getting 16 points. 6 for 11 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3. But again, 16 points is incredibly solid. And Jacob Poeltl ended up going 7 for 11 from the field with 14 points. So again, rather solid game coming in from the Raptors. A pretty poor game coming in from the Nets, but it was still a close game. Now, the Warriors ended up destroying the Lakers in this preseason game, 132-74. But it's all good news because Bronny James just had his career high in points with 17. Yes, Bronny scored in double figures in this game. He also ended with 4 rebounds and 3 steals as well, but he ended up shooting 7 for 17 for 17 points. Still, that's a career high for Bronny. That's the first time he scored double digits in any game that we've watched him play in, and all power to him. Yay. Lifetime achievement for him, essentially. Now, Quincy Olivari ended up scoring 22 points, 8 for 16 from the field, and obviously LeBron and Anthony Davis weren't playing in this game. And that is a big reason why they ended up getting blown out, but that's okay. This is a preseason game. You don't want to play LeBron or Anthony Davis in the final game of the preseason. That is totally fine. Now, the Warriors, they ended up playing really well as a team. They shot 51 for 89 from the field for 57%, just incredible shooting. Meanwhile, the Lakers ended up slumping, shooting 34% and 24% from 3. So, really, this was just a tale of one team just dominating the other. Not really much that needs to be said about that because the whole team played well on Golden State. It wasn't just, and it was really, the highlight of that game was the fact that Bronny ended with 17 points. Now, 76ers, they ended up playing against the Orlando Magic. Now, Kelly Oubre ended up scoring 17 points, and Andre Drummond, out of nowhere, of course he does this, 12 points and 20 rebounds, by far one of the best rebounds that the league has ever seen. And now let's see, the team was really off. The 76ers, they were really off as a team. Now get this, Ricky Council ended up going 1 for 7, but he still had 13 points. Because he made 11 free throws, which is one of the most James Harden kind of things you could ever see. I can't even lie to you. And let's see, let's go ahead. Caleb Martin ended the game 3 for 10 with 10 points. Now, it should also be noted that 76ers, now Jared McCain, I believe, for the 76ers, ended up going under concussion protocol after a preseason game. I'm not sure if it was exactly this preseason game, but he did go under concussion protocol, so I just wanted to update you guys on that rookie, just in case any of you guys are curious as to what he was doing. No, he's not painting his nails. Now, Paolo Banchero ended the game with 21 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. Again, one of the most underrated players in the NBA right now. I fully expect him to have one of the better seasons. Maybe even, if he even has like more or less the same season as he did last year, I wouldn't mind it. I would be impressed by that. And again, they ended up winning 114-99. Nothing much that needs to be said about that game. Now, the Cavs against the Bulls. Now, the Bulls ended up winning 139-137. This game went into overtime. And everybody that started for the Bulls ended up scoring in double figures. Now, Ayo Dosunmu ended up getting 19 points. Kobe White ended up getting 14. Zach LaVine, 18. Nikola Vucevic, 18 as well. Patrick Williams, 10. And Lonzo Ball, he ended up playing, but he came off the bench. He had 11 points, got 3 rebounds along with 3 assists in 16 minutes. And he went 4 for 9 from the field. So overall, pretty solid for Lonzo Ball and his return. And with the Cavs, the same thing applies. Everybody was in double figures for the Cavs. Evan Mobley, 15 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. Donovan Mitchell, 22 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Jared Allen, 25 points, 16 rebounds. Darius Garland, 23 points, 5 assists. And Dean Wade, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. The big difference between these two teams was the bench production. Now, The Chicago Bulls ended up having 2 players coming off the bench scoring in double figures. Meanwhile, the Cavs had 0. And that was one of the ultimate difference makers in this game. That and their 3-point percentage. Because the Cavaliers, they ended up having 106 total possessions. Actually, this game, there was a lot of offensive possessions in this game. So, but aside from that, the Bulls ended up shooting more shots and making them at a higher rate. However, the game was still close. This game was still winnable for Cleveland. And even though, like, I feel like a big part of that was because of their, honestly, like, the big difference in free throws. That's really the big difference here. I mean, the Cavs ended up taking 33 free throws compared to the Bulls taking 21, and that ultimately ended up being the big difference maker, because if you take the free throws out and you just go looking at possession per possession, the Bulls should have easily won this game. Now, going into the next game, the Miami Heat ended up beating the Memphis Grizzlies 114-109, and not really much that needs to be said. No really dominant performances except from Josh Christopher, who ended up getting 17 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds. But aside from that, again, not really much that needs to be said about this game, because, I mean, Ja Morant, he ended up playing, so I guess he's all right with his ankle. 17 points, 6 assists, 8 rebounds. Desmond Bane ended up getting 19 points and 7 assists. And Zach Edey, 7 points, 7 rebounds. A bit of a mediocre performance coming in from Zach tonight, but again, not that big of a deal. It's just a preseason game. Not really much that needs to be said because it was just another boring game. Similar to how this Trailblazers game ended up going on. It was 124-86 in favor of Portland. And now, the highlight of this game, Donovan Clingan, that rookie from UConn, ended up getting 14 points and recording 20 rebounds. Now, I don't know about you. I'd start him over Ayton immediately. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. And not to mention, Rayan Rupert ended up scoring 20 points coming off the bench as well for the Portland Trailblazers. And overall, just a dominant game coming in from Portland, where the Utah Jazz ended up struggling, and they really struggled from 3. Jesus, 9 for 42. You're never going to win a game like that. And of course, Lauri Markkanen, I mean, he played in this game, but he was awful. 1 for 9 from the field and 1 of 5 from 3. And it was just a very, very pitiful performance from the starting lineup. And I know they did not play a combined 20 minutes, but the fact that the most points that a starter was able to generate was only 6 is bad. Like, that is really bad. But again, that's it. That is all for the preseason, and that is the only thing left for this preseason recap. So, thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us. Remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Please remember to use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, or you could use Super Chat if you want your comments and or donations read and featured on the next show. Aside from that, that's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to be ready for the NBA season tomorrow. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't